Millionaire abandons his family for wealth. Their return leaves him regretting everything. The grand estate stood atop a hill, its polished marble facade gleaming in the sunlight. Inside, surrounded by opulence, Victor Carlyle adjusted the cuffs of his tailored suit. A collection of exotic cars lined the expansive garage, and priceless art adorned the walls of his mansion. To anyone on the outside, he had it all: wealth, power, and prestige. But Victor rarely thought about the price he'd paid for this life. 15 years earlier, Victor had been a struggling salesman with a young wife, Clara, and 2 children, Emma and Michael. Life had been simple, filled with laughter and love, but Victor wanted more. He craved success, and when a business opportunity arose that promised immense wealth, he took it without hesitation. The deal demanded long hours, endless travel, and eventually his full commitment. His family had pleaded with him to slow down, to make time for them, but Victor saw their requests as distractions. "I'm doing this for us," he told Clara one evening, brushing off her concerns. "You'll thank me one day." But Clara hadn't thanked him. Instead, she'd packed her bags and taken Emma and Michael with her, leaving behind a note that said, "We just want you, Victor, not your money." At the time, Victor had convinced himself they'd come back. But as the years passed and the silence grew, he buried himself deeper in his work, telling himself he was better off without the distractions of family life. Now, standing in his grand living room, Victor stared out at the sprawling grounds of his estate. A party planner hovered nearby, detailing arrangements for the evening's gala. It was an important event, one that would solidify his latest business deal and further boost his status among the elite. "Everything needs to be perfect," Victor said sharply, cutting off the planner's rambling. "No mistakes." "Of course, Mr. Carlyle," the planner said, nodding quickly. Victor barely heard them. His mind wandered to the rare vintage car he'd recently acquired, sitting in the garage like a trophy. It had cost him more than most people made in a lifetime, but to Victor, it was just another symbol of his success. As the planner left, Victor walked to his private study. The room was filled with books and memorabilia, but one item stood out: an old photograph of his family, taken before everything had changed. Clara smiled warmly in the picture, her arms around a young Emma and Michael. Victor stared at the photo for a moment before turning it face down on the desk. The gala that evening was a spectacle of excess. Guests in designer gowns and tuxedos sipped champagne as they admired Victor's art collection and cars. The air was filled with laughter and the clinking of glasses, but Victor remained detached, his charm practiced and superficial. "Victor, this is incredible," one guest said, gesturing to the opulent surroundings. "You've really outdone yourself." Victor forced a smile. Success demands a certain standard. As the evening went on, Victor found himself retreating to his study, the noise of the party fading behind him. He poured himself a glass of scotch and sat in silence, staring at the face-down photograph on his desk. For a moment, he considered picking it up, but he stopped himself. It was easier to pretend the past didn't matter. The following week, Victor's life took an unexpected turn. One afternoon, as he reviewed financial reports in his office, his assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Carlyle, there's a woman here to see you," she said hesitantly. "She says it's urgent?" Victor frowned. "I'm not expecting anyone." "Who is it?" "She wouldn't give her name," the assistant replied. "But she seems familiar." Curiosity got the better of him, and Victor instructed her to let the visitor in. When the door opened, he froze. Standing there was Clara, her presence like a ghost from a life he'd tried to forget. She looked older, her hair streaked with gray, but her eyes still held the same warmth and the same disappointment. "Victor," Clara said, her voice steady but heavy with emotion. "Clara," he replied, struggling to mask his shock. "What are you doing here?" "I didn't come to dredge up the past," she said, stepping into the room. "I came because our children need you." Victor's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't seen Emma or Michael in over a decade. The last he'd heard, they were living with Clara in a modest home in the suburbs. He'd sent checks over the years, but they'd always been returned. "What's going on?" he asked, his tone cautious. "Michael's in trouble," Clara said, her voice breaking. "He made some mistakes, and now he's facing serious consequences. He needs help, your help? Victor felt a pang of guilt, but he quickly buried it. You left, Clara. You decided to walk away. Why come to me now? Clara's eyes hardened. Because you're his father, Victor. And despite everything, he still needs you. We all do. That night, Victor couldn't sleep. Clara's words replayed in his mind, dredging up memories he tried to suppress. He remembered Michael's laughter as a boy, the way Emma used to cling to his leg when he came home from work. He'd told himself they were better off without him, but now he wasn't so sure. The next morning, Victor called Clara. Tell me what's going on, he said, his voice softer than before. Clara explained that Michael had fallen in with the wrong crowd after high school. He'd been caught up in a scheme that had landed him in legal trouble, and the family didn't have the resources to help him. He's a good kid, Victor, Clara said. He just lost his way. But he can't do this alone. Victor felt a surge of emotion he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. For the first time, he wondered if all his wealth and success meant anything if he couldn't use it to help his own son. Over the next few weeks, Victor worked tirelessly to support Michael's case. He hired the best legal team money could buy and even attended meetings with the lawyers, something he never thought he'd do. During this time, he reconnected with Clara, who reluctantly allowed him back into their lives. But the most surprising reunion was with Emma. Now in her 20s, she was pursuing a career in social work, a path that seemed to echo the warmth and compassion Clara had always shown. I don't need your money, Emma said when Victor offered to help pay for her schooling. I just need to know you care. Her words cut deeper than Victor expected. He realized that all the material wealth he'd accumulated couldn't buy back the time he'd lost or the trust he'd broken. For the first time, he felt the weight of his choices. As Michael's case progressed, Victor found himself spending more time with his family. They were hesitant at first, unsure if they could trust him, but slowly, walls began to come down. Victor started to see glimpses of the life he'd left behind. The laughter, the connection, the love. One evening, as they sat around Clara's modest dining table, Victor looked at his children and felt something he hadn't felt in years, a sense of belonging. I'm sorry, he said suddenly, his voice thick with emotion. For everything. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I see now how much I hurt all of you. Clara reached across the table, placing a hand on his. It's never too late to make things right, Victor. The experience changed Victor. He began to reevaluate his priorities, spending less time chasing business deals and more time rebuilding his relationships. He even sold his sprawling estate, downsizing to a simpler home closer to his family. Michael's case was eventually resolved, and while the road to recovery was long, he had the support of both his parents. Emma, too, began to warm to Victor, allowing him to be part of her life in small but meaningful ways. For the first time in years, Victor felt truly wealthy, not because of his bank account, but because of the love and connection he had rediscovered. Victor found himself in an unfamiliar world, one where money and power couldn't fix everything. Spending time with his family was both humbling and rewarding. He had to earn their trust day by day, moment by moment. It was a slow process, and though there were setbacks, Victor was determined to prove that he had changed. Michael, still navigating the aftermath of his legal troubles, remained guarded around Victor. While he appreciated the legal help, he struggled to see his father as anything more than a distant figure who had abandoned them when they needed him most. But Victor wasn't deterred. He showed up for every meeting, supported every step of Michael's recovery process, and did his best to listen without judgment. One evening, as they sat on Clara's porch, Michael finally opened up. You know, I used to imagine what it would be like if you came back, Michael said, his voice tinged with both bitterness and vulnerability. I thought you'd show up, apologize, and everything would be okay. But life doesn't work like that. Victor nodded, his chest tightening. I know I can't undo what I've done, he said quietly. But I'm here now, and I want to do better. For you, for Emma, and for your mom. Michael looked at him, searching his face for sincerity. After a long pause, he nodded. All right, but don't think for a second that it's going to be easy. Victor smiled faintly. I don't expect it to be. Emma, on the other hand, was quicker to forgive. As a social worker, she had seen firsthand how broken relationships could fester if left unresolved. While she couldn't forget the pain Victor had caused, she believed in the power of redemption. One afternoon, Emma invited Victor to join her at a community outreach event she was organizing. It was held in a small community center and aimed to provide resources and support for struggling families. Victor, unsure of what to expect, agreed. As he entered the center, he was struck by the energy and warmth of the place. Volunteers bustled about, helping parents fill out forms, organizing activities for children, and distributing donated goods. Emma was at the heart of it all, her compassion and leadership shining through. "Dad," she said, walking over to him with a clipboard in hand. "You can help over there?" She pointed to a table where volunteers were sorting donations. Victor hesitated. This wasn't his world. He was used to boardrooms and high-stakes negotiations, not folding clothes and organizing canned goods. But as he started working, something unexpected happened. He felt a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. Throughout the day, Victor watched Emma interact with the families, her kindness and empathy evident in every word and gesture. He realized how much he had missed by not being there for her as she grew up. That evening, as they packed up the event, Victor pulled her aside. "You're incredible," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so proud of you, Emma." Emma smiled, her eyes glistening. "Thanks, Dad. It means a lot to hear you say that." Meanwhile, Victor began to notice subtle changes in his relationship with Clara. Their conversations, once strained and formal, had grown warmer. Clara was still cautious, but there were moments when her guard lowered, and they could laugh together like they used to. One evening, as they sat in the living room after dinner, Clara brought out an old photo album. She flipped through the pages, stopping at a picture of their family on a beach vacation. Victor's heart ached as he looked at the image, remembering the laughter and love they'd once shared. "Do you ever think about what might have been?" Clara asked softly. "All the time," Victor admitted. "I think about it every day. And I regret every choice that took me away from you and the kids." Clara looked at him for a long moment before closing the album. "You can't change the past, Victor. But maybe you can help shape the future." Victor took her words to heart. He began to look for ways to not only support his family but also to use his wealth and influence for good. Inspired by Emma's work, he decided to launch a foundation focused on providing opportunities for families in need. The Carlisle Family Foundation, as he named it, would fund community programs, scholarships, and mentorship initiatives. Victor involved his family in every step of the process. Emma helped design the outreach programs, while Michael provided input on initiatives to support young adults trying to rebuild their lives after mistakes. Even Clara, who had initially been skeptical, offered her insights. The foundation's launch event was held at a modest community center, a deliberate choice to reflect its mission. Victor stood before the audience, his family by his side, and delivered a heartfelt speech. "For years, I chased success at the expense of everything that truly mattered," he said. "But life has a way of teaching you what's important. This foundation is a second chance, not just for me, but for anyone who needs it. And I'm grateful to my family for giving me the chance to make things right." The applause that followed was genuine, and for the first time in years, Victor felt like he was part of something meaningful. As the months went by, the foundation flourished. Victor's family became closer than ever, working together to make a difference. Michael, who had initially been reluctant to get involved, found purpose in mentoring at-risk youth through the foundation's programs. Emma's work expanded, supported by the resources the foundation provided, and she became a leading voice in community outreach. Victor's relationship with Clara also deepened. While they had never formally reconciled, their bond grew stronger as they spent more time together. One evening, after a long day of foundation work, Victor found himself standing in Clara's kitchen as she prepared tea. "Clara," he said hesitantly, "do you think there's a chance for us to?" Clara turned to him, her expression gentle but firm. "Victor, I think we're in a good place right now. Let's focus on that." Victor nodded, understanding that rebuilding their relationship would take time. But for the first time, he felt hope. One day, as Victor sat in his office reviewing the foundation's latest report, he received a surprise visit. Michael walked in, holding a folder. "Hey, Dad," Michael said, a hint of nervousness in his voice. I've been working on something and I wanted to show you. Victor motioned for him to sit, intrigued. Michael opened the folder, revealing plans for a new program aimed at helping young people learn vocational skills. I was thinking we could partner with local businesses, Michael explained. We'd provide training, internships, and job placement. It could give people a real chance to turn their lives around. Victor studied the plans, impressed by Michael's thoughtfulness and vision. This is incredible, he said. You've really thought this through? Michael smiled, his confidence growing. I want to do something that matters, Dad. Something that helps people? Victor felt a surge of pride. You already are. As the program launched and the foundation continued to grow, Victor realized how much his life had changed. The wealth and power that had once defined him now felt hollow compared to the joy of seeing his family thrive. One evening, as they gathered for a family dinner, Victor looked around the table. Emma was sharing stories from her latest outreach event. Michael was laughing at a joke Clara had made, and the warmth of their connection filled the room. Victor raised his glass, his voice steady but emotional. I want to thank all of you for giving me a second chance. I don't deserve it, but I'm grateful every day. Clara reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. We're grateful too, Victor. You've come a long way. As the evening went on, Victor felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. He had lost so much, but he had also found something far greater, the love and forgiveness of his family. And as he looked around the table, he knew he would spend the rest of his life cherishing it. The Carlisle Family Foundation grew to become a cornerstone of hope in communities across the country. Its programs helped thousands of families, provided opportunities to young adults, and reconnected people to a sense of purpose. But for Victor, the greatest reward was seeing his family heal and thrive together. He had gone from being a man consumed by ambition to someone who found joy in building relationships and making a real difference. Victor's days were filled with purpose, but they weren't without challenges. As the foundation expanded, he was constantly learning how to navigate the complexities of nonprofit work. The transition from a high-powered corporate lifestyle to one focused on service wasn't always smooth, but Victor embraced every obstacle as a chance to grow. One evening, Victor found himself sitting on the porch of Clara's home, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Michael had just left after a day of mentoring sessions at the foundation, and Emma was busy preparing for a community event. It was a rare moment of quiet, and Victor cherished it. Clara joined him on the porch, carrying 2 mugs of tea. She handed one to Victor before settling into the chair beside him. For a while, neither of them spoke, content to enjoy the stillness. You've changed, Victor, Clara said finally, her voice soft but sincere. Victor looked at her, surprised. I hope so. I've spent years trying to make up for my mistakes. Clara nodded. You've done more than that. You've built something incredible. But more importantly, you've found your way back to what matters. Victor sighed, his gaze fixed on the horizon. I just wish it hadn't taken me so long to figure it out. Clara placed a hand on his. We can't change the past, Victor. But you've made the present and the future better. That's what counts. Her words stayed with him, offering a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. The following month, the Carlisle Family Foundation celebrated its 5-year anniversary. The event was held in a community park, with families, volunteers, and program participants coming together to celebrate the milestone. There were speeches, performances, and heartfelt testimonials from people whose lives had been changed by the foundation. Victor stood at the edge of the crowd, watching with a mixture of pride and humility. This wasn't just his achievement, it was the result of a collective effort driven by his family and the countless individuals who believed in the foundation's mission. As the sun began to set, Emma took the stage to deliver a speech. She spoke passionately about the importance of community, resilience, and second chances. When she finished, she turned to Victor and motioned for him to join her. Victor hesitated for a moment before stepping onto the stage. The crowd erupted into applause as he approached the microphone. He looked out at the sea of faces, his heart swelling with gratitude. Thank you, he began, his voice steady. Thank you for believing in this foundation and in the power of hope. When we started this journey, I had no idea how much it would change my life and the lives of so many others. He paused, glancing at his family who stood at the front of the crowd. For a long time, I thought success meant wealth and power. But I was wrong. True success is about the impact we have on others, the connections we build, and the love we share. And for that, I owe everything to my family. The applause that followed was thunderous, and Victor felt a profound sense of fulfillment. He had spent years searching for meaning, and now he had finally found it. As the foundation continued to thrive, Victor decided to focus on passing the torch to the next generation of leaders. He worked closely with Emma and Michael, preparing them to take on more responsibilities within the organization. Emma, with her natural leadership and compassion, was poised to become the foundation's new director, while Michael's innovative ideas made him an integral part of its future growth. One afternoon, Victor called a meeting with his family. They gathered in the foundation's conference room, where Victor laid out his plans. "I've been thinking a lot about the future," he said, his tone serious but hopeful. "And I believe it's time for me to step back and let you two lead." Emma and Michael exchanged surprised looks. "Dad, are you sure?" Emma asked. Victor nodded. "This foundation is stronger than ever, and that's because of you. I trust you to carry on its mission and make it even better." Michael leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. "What about you? What will you do?" Victor smiled. "I'll still be here to support you, but I want to focus on spending more time with the people who matter most. I missed so much of your lives growing up. I don't want to miss another moment." Emma reached across the table, squeezing Victor's hand. "We'll make you proud, Dad." "You already have," Victor said, his voice thick with emotion. Stepping back from the foundation allowed Victor to explore other ways to give back. He began mentoring young entrepreneurs, sharing the lessons he'd learned from his successes and failures. He also reconnected with old friends, many of whom had drifted away during his years of relentless ambition. But the most meaningful moments were the ones spent with his family. Victor became a constant presence in their lives, attending Emma's events, supporting Michael's projects, and even joining Clara for weekly dinners. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, and Victor cherished every moment. One evening, as they gathered for a family barbecue in Clara's backyard, Victor felt a sense of contentment he hadn't known was possible. The sound of laughter filled the air as Emma teased Michael about his grilling skills, and Clara smiled warmly as she watched them. Victor raised his glass, calling for everyone's attention. "I just want to say how grateful I am for all of you," he said, his voice steady but emotional. "You've given me a second chance, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to deserve it." Clara stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You already do, Victor." As the evening continued, Victor realized that this was what he'd been searching for all along. Not wealth or power, but connection, love, and a sense of purpose. Years later, as Victor reflected on his journey, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The man who had once abandoned his family for wealth had found redemption in their forgiveness and love. He had learned that true success wasn't measured in dollars but in the impact we have on others. And as he watched his family thrive, Victor knew that his greatest legacy wasn't the foundation he'd built or the wealth he'd accumulated, it was the relationships he'd repaired and the lives he'd touched. For the first time in his life, Victor felt truly rich. Victor's life had reached a rhythm that felt both fulfilling and peaceful. Each day was an opportunity to spend time with his family, mentor others, and see the Carlyle Family Foundation thrive under Emma and Michael's leadership. But as time passed, he found himself reflecting more on the future, not just his family's, but the lasting impact of his life's work. One morning, Victor woke early, the house quiet as the sun began to rise. Sitting at the kitchen table with a steaming cup of coffee, he flipped through the foundation's latest quarterly report. The numbers were impressive: thousands of lives impacted, new programs launched, and countless success stories. Yet, there was a nagging thought in the back of his mind: what more can I do? Later that day, Victor called Emma and Michael into his home office. The two siblings, now confident leaders in their own right, arrived with a mix of curiosity and concern. "Dad," Emma said, taking a seat. "What's going on?" Victor leaned forward, his hands clasped. "I've been thinking a lot about our work and how we can take it to the next level. The foundation is doing incredible things, but I think we're only scratching the surface of what's possible. Michael raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? I've been researching global initiatives, Victor explained. There are so many communities around the world that lack access to even the most basic resources: clean water, education, healthcare. What if we expanded Dream Build beyond the borders of this country? Emma and Michael exchanged a look. Emma was the first to speak. That's ambitious, Dad. But it's also a huge undertaking. I know, Victor said. And I'm not saying we do it overnight. But we've built something amazing here. Why not use that momentum to reach even more people? Michael leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. It's a big leap, but I think we can do it, if we're strategic about it. Emma nodded. We'd need to partner with existing organizations on the ground, build relationships with local leaders, and ensure we're culturally sensitive in how we operate. Victor smiled, pride swelling in his chest. That's exactly the kind of thinking we need. Are you both on board? Emma and Michael shared a grin before turning back to their father. We're in, Emma said. The decision to expand internationally marked the beginning of a new chapter for the Carlyle Family Foundation. Over the next several months, Victor and his children worked tirelessly to build partnerships with global organizations. They traveled to remote villages, urban centers, and underserved communities, learning about the unique challenges each region faced. During a visit to a small village in Southeast Asia, Victor met a young girl named Lynn. She was only 9 years old but spoke with a wisdom beyond her years. Lynn dreamed of becoming a doctor, but her village had no school and the nearest medical facility was miles away. Victor was deeply moved by Lynn's story. He promised her that the foundation would help build a school in her village. You deserve the chance to follow your dreams, he told her. True to his word, Victor spearheaded the project, rallying donors and coordinating with local leaders. A year later, the village had its first school, a modest building with brightly painted walls and eager students filling its classrooms. When Victor returned for the school's opening ceremony, Lynn ran up to him, her face beaming with gratitude. Thank you, Mr. Carlyle, she said. Because of you, we can learn and grow. Victor knelt to her level, his voice filled with emotion. This isn't just me, Lynn. It's everyone who believes in you and your dreams. Back at home, Clara watched Victor's transformation with a mix of admiration and pride. He had become the man she always knew he could be, kind, selfless, and deeply committed to making the world a better place. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the stars, Clara turned to Victor. You've come a long way, she said softly. It's almost hard to believe you're the same man who once chased wealth at all costs. Victor chuckled, his gaze fixed on the sky. Sometimes I can't believe it either. But losing everything made me realize what really mattered. Clara smiled. You didn't lose everything, Victor. You just took a detour. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the bond between them stronger than it had been in years. As the foundation's global impact grew, so did its reputation. Victor and his family were invited to speak at international conferences, sharing their experiences and inspiring others to take action. Emma and Michael quickly became recognized as thought leaders in the nonprofit world, their innovative approaches earning widespread praise. But Victor's proudest moments weren't on stage or in the spotlight. They were the quiet, personal interactions, like watching Michael mentor a group of young men who reminded him of his younger self, or seeing Emma light up as she led a workshop for aspiring social workers. One day, while walking through the foundation's headquarters, Victor overheard a conversation between two staff members. They were discussing a recent program that had helped a single mother start her own business, lifting her family out of poverty. That's what this place is all about, one of them said. Changing lives, one step at a time. Victor smiled to himself, his heart full. He had once measured success by the size of his bank account and the prestige of his possessions. Now, he measured it in moments like these. Years passed, and the Carlyle Family Foundation continued to thrive. Victor, now in his 70s, decided it was time to officially retire. At a farewell event held in his honor, he stood before a room filled with family, friends, and colleagues, reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. When I started this foundation, it wasn't just about giving back, Victor said. It was about redemption, about trying to make up for the mistakes I'd made. But along the way, I realized something important. It's not about making up for the past. It's about building a better future. He looked at Emma and Michael, who stood beside him. I couldn't be prouder of my children, who have turned this foundation into something greater than I ever imagined. The future is in their hands now, and I know they'll continue to make a difference. The applause that followed was filled with love and admiration. As Victor stepped off the stage, Clara was waiting for him, her smile radiant. "You did it, Victor," she said, taking his hand. "You turned your life around." Victor squeezed her hand, his eyes glistening with tears. "I couldn't have done it without you." In the years that followed, Victor enjoyed a quieter life. He spent his days surrounded by family, visiting the communities he had helped, and mentoring the next generation of changemakers. His legacy wasn't just the foundation, it was the countless lives he had touched and the example he had set for others. One sunny afternoon, as Victor sat in his garden watching his grandchildren play, Emma joined him, holding a cup of tea. "They're growing up so fast," Victor said, nodding toward the kids. Emma smiled. "They are. And they'll grow up knowing what it means to make a difference. Because of you?" Victor leaned back in his chair, a contented smile on his face. "That's all I ever wanted." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Victor felt a deep sense of peace. He had spent years chasing wealth, only to discover that the greatest treasures in life couldn't be bought. And as he watched his family thrive, he knew he had truly found his fortune. Victor's retirement marked the beginning of a new chapter, one focused on the simplicity and joy of everyday life. For the first time in decades, he allowed himself to slow down. He no longer woke up to the pressure of meetings or deadlines. Instead, his mornings began with the sound of birds chirping outside his window, the scent of coffee brewing in the kitchen, and the occasional laughter of his grandchildren visiting the house. Despite stepping away from the Carlyle Family Foundation, Victor couldn't completely remove himself from the work that had become such a vital part of his identity. He continued to act as an informal advisor, offering insights and guidance to Emma, Michael, and the foundation's board. But his involvement was different now, less about control and more about encouragement. One afternoon, while sitting in the foundation's library, Victor received a call from Emma. She was excited about a new initiative the foundation was launching, a global summit that would bring together leaders, educators, and changemakers to share ideas and create collaborative solutions. "It's going to be our biggest event yet," Emma said. "And I was hoping you'd agree to deliver the closing speech." Victor hesitated. It had been years since he'd spoken at an event of that scale, and part of him wondered if his story still held relevance. But Emma's confidence in him was unwavering. "Dad," she said gently, "you've inspired so many people, including me and Michael. You need to be part of this." Moved by her words, Victor agreed. Over the following weeks, he worked on his speech, reflecting on the lessons he'd learned over a lifetime of successes, failures, and second chances. The day of the summit arrived, and Victor found himself back in the spotlight. The event was held in a grand auditorium, its seats filled with people from all over the world. Emma had done an incredible job organizing the summit, and Michael's program design ensured the event was as impactful as it was inspirational. As Victor walked onto the stage to deliver his speech, the audience erupted into applause. He took a moment to soak it in, feeling both humbled and energized by the crowd's enthusiasm. "When I look out at all of you," Victor began, his voice steady but emotional, "I see a world of possibility. Each of you has the power to create change, to make an impact, to build something that lasts. And I want to tell you how I learned that lesson, not through success, but through failure." He shared the story of his journey, from a man consumed by ambition to someone who discovered the true meaning of wealth in the love and forgiveness of his family. He spoke about the power of second chances, the importance of community, and the belief that it's never too late to make a difference. As he concluded, Victor's voice grew firm. "We don't measure our lives by the riches we acquire or the accolades we receive. We measure them by the lives we touch, the hope we inspire, and the legacy we leave behind. I hope my story shows you that it's never too late to start building that legacy." The standing ovation that followed was deafening. Victor's heart swelled with gratitude as he stepped off the stage, where Emma and Michael were waiting for him. "You were amazing, Dad," Emma said, hugging him tightly. Michael grinned. I don't think there was a dry eye in the room. Victor chuckled, feeling a sense of fulfillment he hadn't known in years. Thank you, both of you. I couldn't have done any of this without you. As the summit concluded, Victor returned to his quiet life with a renewed sense of purpose. He spent his days mentoring young leaders, visiting the communities supported by the foundation, and cherishing the moments he shared with his family. Clara often joined him on his visits, their bond stronger than ever. Though they had never remarried, their relationship had deepened into a partnership built on mutual respect and understanding. One day, during a visit to a rural school funded by the foundation, Victor met a boy named Matteo. Matteo was shy but curious, with a knack for asking insightful questions. As they talked, Victor learned that Matteo dreamed of becoming an engineer but worried he wouldn't have the resources to pursue higher education. You remind me of someone I used to know, Victor said, smiling. A young boy with big dreams and no idea how to make them happen. But let me tell you something, Matteo. If you work hard and believe in yourself, doors will open. Matteo's face lit up. Do you really think so? Victor nodded. I know so. And I'll make sure you have the support you need to get there. That promise stayed with Victor long after he left the school. He worked with Emma and Michael to create a new scholarship program specifically for students like Matteo, young people with talent, drive, and dreams but limited resources. The program, aptly named Dream Forward, became one of the foundation's most impactful initiatives. As Victor grew older, he began to think about the legacy he would leave behind. He had lived a life filled with mistakes and regrets, but also one of redemption and purpose. His greatest pride wasn't the foundation itself, but the ripple effect it had created, the lives it had touched, the opportunities it had provided, and the hope it had inspired. One evening, as he sat in his garden watching the sunset, Clara joined him, carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. She handed one to Victor and settled into the chair beside him. You've built something remarkable, she said, her voice filled with admiration. And you've done it with your heart in the right place. Victor smiled, his gaze fixed on the horizon. I just hope it lasts, that it continues to grow, even after I'm gone. Clara placed a hand on his. Will, because you've given Emma and Michael more than just an organization to run. You've given them a purpose. Victor nodded, feeling a sense of peace. I guess I have. Years later, as Victor's health began to decline, he remained as involved in the foundation as he could. Even when he could no longer travel, he stayed connected through video calls, emails, and handwritten notes of encouragement. His wisdom and experience continued to guide Emma, Michael, and the entire foundation team. On his final birthday, the family gathered at Clara's house to celebrate. The room was filled with laughter, stories, and the warmth of generations coming together. Victor sat in his favorite chair, surrounded by his children and grandchildren, his heart full. As the evening wound down, Emma stood and raised a toast. To Dad, she said, her voice thick with emotion. A man who taught us the importance of love, forgiveness, and making a difference. We're so proud of you. The room erupted into cheers, and Victor, overcome with gratitude, raised his glass. To all of you, he said, his voice steady but soft. You're my greatest accomplishment. Victor passed away peacefully a few months later, leaving behind a legacy that would endure for generations. At his memorial service, friends, family, and colleagues shared stories of the man who had once been consumed by ambition but had found redemption in the love of his family and the work of his heart. Emma and Michael, now the stewards of the Carlisle Family Foundation, vowed to continue their father's mission. They expanded the foundation's reach, ensuring that its programs would touch lives around the world. And as they carried forward Victor's vision, they knew he was still with them, in the lives he had changed, the dreams he had nurtured, and the legacy he had built. Victor's passing left a void in the hearts of those who loved him, but his legacy continued to inspire. The Carlisle Family Foundation, now led by Emma and Michael, became a beacon of hope, touching lives across the globe. As they expanded its reach, they often reflected on the lessons their father had taught them, not just about leadership, but about the power of compassion, resilience, and second chances. In the weeks following Victor's memorial, Emma and Michael immersed themselves in the work of the foundation. They felt a renewed sense of purpose, driven by their desire to honor their father's memory. But amidst the busy days, they also took time to remember him in quieter ways. One evening, Emma found herself sitting in her father's old office, the familiar scent of his cologne lingering in the air. The desk was neatly organized, with a single photo frame standing out among the papers. It was a picture of Victor, Clara, Emma, and Michael from years ago, taken during one of the foundation's early events. Emma smiled, her heart swelling with both grief and gratitude. "Miss him, don't you?" Michael said, appearing in the doorway. Emma nodded, brushing away a tear. "Every day. But I feel like he's still here, guiding us." Michael walked into the room and sat across from her. "Yes. Everything we're doing, it's because of him. And I think he'd be proud of how far we've come." Emma reached across the desk, taking her brother's hand. "We'll keep making him proud. Together." Over the next year, the foundation reached new heights. Emma and Michael launched several ambitious initiatives, including a global partnership with other nonprofit organizations to address systemic issues like poverty, education inequality, and climate change. The collaboration brought together resources, expertise, and passion from across the world, creating a network of changemakers united by a shared vision. One of their most impactful projects was a mentorship program for young leaders, modeled after the guidance Victor had provided to so many. Emma and Michael personally mentored several participants, sharing their father's wisdom and their own experiences. Among the ments was a young woman named Aisha, who had grown up in a refugee camp but dreamed of becoming an advocate for displaced communities. Through the foundation's support, Aisha gained access to education and training, eventually becoming a powerful voice for change. During a leadership summit, Aisha gave a speech about her journey, crediting the foundation and Victor for inspiring her. Victor Carlisle believed in second chances, she said, her voice strong and clear. "Because of him, I was given the chance to dream again. And now, I want to give others that same hope." As Emma and Michael watched from the audience, they felt an overwhelming sense of pride. Their father's legacy wasn't just alive, it was thriving. Meanwhile, Clara found her own way of honoring Victor's memory. She began volunteering full-time with the foundation, focusing on community outreach and connecting with the families the organization served. Clara's warmth and empathy made her a natural at the role, and she quickly became a beloved figure in the foundation's programs. One day, while visiting a small village where the foundation had built a school, Clara met a group of mothers who shared their stories of how the initiative had transformed their children's lives. "We never thought this would be possible," one of the mothers said, tears streaming down her face. "Our children have hope now, because of what your family has done." Clara felt a lump in her throat as she listened. "This isn't just my family's work," she said. "It's all of us coming together to create something better." As she left the village, Clara thought about how far they had come. What had started as Victor's attempt at redemption had blossomed into a global movement, driven by love and a desire to make the world a better place. As the foundation grew, Emma and Michael faced new challenges. Balancing the demands of their leadership roles with their personal lives was no easy task, and there were moments when the weight of responsibility felt overwhelming. One evening, after a particularly long day, Emma and Michael sat together in the foundation's headquarters, surrounded by paperwork and reports. "Do you ever feel like we're in over our heads?" Michael asked, leaning back in his chair. "All the time," Emma admitted with a laugh. "But then I remember what Dad used to say, it's not about doing it all yourself, it's about building a team that shares your vision." Michael smiled. "He always had a way of simplifying things, didn't he?" Emma nodded. "He believed in us. And if he thought we could handle this, then we can." Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. A staff member entered, holding a stack of letters from program participants. As Emma and Michael read through the heartfelt messages, their exhaustion melted away. Each letter was a reminder of why they did what they did, and why they couldn't stop now. Years passed, and the Carlisle Family Foundation continued to evolve. Emma and Michael introduced new technology and innovative approaches to maximize the foundation's impact. They worked tirelessly to ensure that the organization remained true to its mission, even as it adapted to a changing world. One day, as they prepared for the Foundation's 10th anniversary celebration, Emma stumbled upon an old journal in her father's belongings. Flipping through its pages, she discovered Victor's thoughts, ideas, and reflections from the early days of the Foundation. In one entry, he had written, "I've made mistakes, more than I can count. But if I can leave behind something good, something that helps others, then maybe those mistakes will have been worth it." Emma felt tears welling up as she read the words. She brought the journal to Michael, who shared her emotional reaction. "We should share this at the celebration," Emma said. "Dad's words deserve to be heard." Michael agreed, and the journal became a centerpiece of the event. As Emma read excerpts during her speech, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Victor's humility, honesty, and hope resonated deeply with everyone in attendance. The anniversary celebration was a beautiful tribute to Victor's life and legacy. Guests included program participants, community leaders, and partners who had supported the Foundation's mission over the years. Clara, Emma, and Michael stood together on stage, their bonds stronger than ever. As Emma delivered the closing remarks, she looked out at the audience and felt a profound sense of gratitude. "This foundation started with one man's dream to make things right," she said. "But it grew into something so much bigger, something that belongs to all of us. My father believed in the power of second chances, and because of him, countless lives have been changed. Let's honor his legacy by continuing to create opportunities, inspire hope, and build a better world." The room erupted into applause, and Emma felt a sense of peace. Her father's dream had become a reality, and it was just the beginning. As the years went on, the Carlyle Family Foundation remained a force for good, touching lives across generations. Emma and Michael continued to lead with integrity, compassion, and vision, guided by the lessons their father had taught them. And though Victor was no longer with them, his presence was felt in every project, every success story, and every life the Foundation touched. His journey had been one of redemption, love, and purpose, and it left a legacy that would endure for generations to come. Victor Carlyle's story was proof that it's never too late to change, to grow, and to make a difference. And in the hearts of those who loved him, he would always be remembered as a man who turned his greatest mistakes into his greatest triumphs.